start off with is, what are you personally the most excited about with the upcoming update in 10.1?
Sure. Of course, I'm going to talk about user interface first. All classes who has any kind of class resource UI, for example, the Warlock, they have the shards, the Pharaoh Druids, they have the combo points, etc. We're adding UI completely for all the classes. So they are Pharaoh Druid, Paladin, Mage, Death Knight, Windowwalk Monk, Rogue, and Warlock, like I said before. So what we wanted to do was to modernize using our new standards after the UI revamp. So improves accessibility as well, clarity, and of course, gameplay and combat. Feral Druid, they're receiving a completely new combo point art, new animations, and for example, for this one, you're gonna see like a cat claw, like scratching and using the combo. So it's pretty cute. And the next one is the Paladin. They are getting a whole new set of Holy Power art. They look really awesome. And also we keep working on the edit mode. We look into what the community was looking for. And one of the interesting ones is that we made the mini map bigger and then, oh, great, people love it. But actually got a lot of feedback about people wanting to be a little smaller because of laptop players. So we add the option to, you can resize again to be a little smaller, but you can actually make even bigger now because of 4K monitors. And so we're going to give you more options. A lot of feedback for restoration druids regarding the buffs. And the rate frames. Now, if you make your rate frame a bit larger, you can get up to 7 buffs. We also have advanced options that you can check in edit mode, and then you have, a bunch of new options. But we made sure to put at the top the ones that we believe people use the most based on data. We have so much in this patch, and just to highlight, I'm very excited about the Lone Niffin, the new renown track, the mole people. They are very cute. We can, yeah, we can talk about them more, and because they have the snail race, which is really cute, and I can't wait to get my snail mount after that.
Oh, amazing. Laura, just on the UI, how much do third-party apps actually have an influence on the UI?
Actually, a lot, because over the years we learned what players are looking for the most, what became add-ons that are like people must have those. So it became kind of almost like a standard. So with the revamp, we try to, understand who those are. And then we added like edit mode, right? It's very similar to, add-ons out there, and also
Yes.
similar to what new games are doing. So we want to make sure that new players, when they get to WoW, it's pretty much expected to have it in edit mode. As we see more engagement and feedback from the community, we're gonna integrate more as we can, but we want to make sure that the UI is always very easy to use. That's our main goal. We don't want to overload or make it too complicated, so we want to take our time to check the user experience, make sure it's easy for very experienced players and new players as well.
Morgan, what are you most excited about?
Wow. I personally always really enjoy kind of the like instance content, right? So like dungeons and raids and kind of PvP are always my go-to with the new season. But for me personally, with Embers on Eltharion, I think the biggest change that we're going to see is actually with Mythic Plus, which is what I am also really excited for. The dungeon pool will be entirely new. Outside of a new expansion where that is always the case, that has never happened in the middle of an expansion like we're doing for season 2. So I think that's going to have a really big impact on just kind of what your season 2 experience is. We're all starting basically from scratch again, which for me is one of my most exciting parts of a new expansion, is getting to learn all the new dungeons. So for season 2, we'll have the other 4 Dragonflight dungeons that we haven't experienced yet, as well as 4 of our kind of returning champions or legacy dungeons that will be coming into the Mythic Plus pool. And on top of that, we really took a huge step back and really revisited and refreshed our affixes themselves. So not only did we add a whole bunch of new interesting affixes, but we also kind of adjusted when the affixes turn on with Mythic Plus. And that really speaks to the goal that we originally set out with in Dragonflight to add more of a sense of progression with Mythic Plus, to really make it feel like it's more aligned with things like PvP and raiding, where as a raider, you don't start raiding thinking, oh, I'm going to finish the mythic raid, right? Like that's something you kind of aspire to do and you kind of work your way towards. Where Mythic Plus, as a Mythic Plus player, it was some very, very large majority of the player base kind of hit the cap or the ceiling on Mythic Plus. So we really wanted to like stretch the progression out there. Like if you're a person who's looking forward to earning like Keystone Master, when
Mhm.
you're pushing in that 14, 15 range, now you'll have a new affix bucket that turns on, which will really change your experience. Which actually, if you think about when Mythic Plus was first added way back in Legion, it's more similar to that experience where in Legion, like level 10 was basically your ceiling there and was where
Yeah.
it was actually really hard as well. And not many people pushed too far past that, which is also when way back in the day, Tyrannical and Fortified used to turn on at level 10. Um, so now we're looking at, we've stretched the difficulty scale out and the rewards all the way up to 20, but we never really looked at the affixes. So I think this season is going to be such a big change. It's going to feel really fresh and exciting, and I kind of can't wait to see people's reactions to all the changes, as well as the new returning dungeons. Like Vortex Pinnacle is a dungeon from Cataclysm, but it's gotten such a facelift. I think it'll feel like an entirely new dungeon for even people who played back in Cataclysm.
The biggest change in this is going to be cross-faction guilds. How do you plan on making the PvP fantasy make sense in a world where the Horde and Alliance aren't officially at war anymore?
Yeah, it's actually really interesting to think about because if you think all the way back to Burning Crusade, when we first added Arena, even that was you could fight Horde versus Horde and Alliance versus Alliance. Why? Which is why the colors in Arena were like I think gold and green, because it was like, well, you can't do red and blue. So there's
Mhm.
always been a bit of a fantasy kind of stretch there, where it's that spirit of competition, where you're kind of battling each other. And then also there are things like war mode, where ultimately when we talk about our factions, we're talking about like the leadership of our factions, right? Like the people who are at the head of the Horde and the Alliance, and their goals together, fictionally feeling aligned. It's funny, we actually when we were talking about adding cross-faction guilds, we were like, you know what? This is not really a huge departure from a, narrative perspective. It's almost like the systems of the game are catching up with the narrative, right? Like we've been working together in a collaborative way for a while now. Like, not I really feel like the guilds, cross-faction guilds is almost the system catching up with the narrative. But that isn't to say that like, Horde's philosophy of how they approach, solving problems and Alliance's philosophy won't always be very deeply seated in like the fabric of World of Warcraft, right? Even if the factions over time become like more cooperative, what sets them
Mm.
apart is very much those philosophies, which will always be integral to the narrative of the game.
Considering guilds, considering groups of people that play together, with the success of how popular housing is in, Final Fantasy, the success of the farms in Mr. Pandaria, is guild housing going to happen?
I actually, I remember, I think I was even doing, interviews back in the Warlords of Draenor days, and I remember, I think it was Tom Chilton at the time used to be like, oh, and wow, you don't have a house, you have a town, which is why we have garrisons. That was one of the lines he used to say I remembered. But yeah, I mean, obviously, I can't announce anything
No, no, of
for the
course not.
future, and certainly, we would not do anything with housing in Dragonflight, but that's one of those things that comes up often, not only with the community, but within our own team about like, hey, that feature that isn't in your game, that's really cool, and a lot of people find really compelling. What's going on with that? So yeah, I mean, nothing to announce, but we agree it's a really cool thing. It's a really awesome idea. Um, and it's just a matter of like, finding the right time and the right fit for that within World of Warcraft, because that's not a not a small undertaking, right?
No,
But
it's
yeah,
not.
it's definitely a cool idea. It's definitely a fun thing that we discuss amongst ourselves as well.
Yeah, I think we can say that, like the community, we are very passionate about that idea as well. So
Yeah,
just hinting a
definitely.
little bit.
Oh, well, I think World of Warcraft has a fantastic foundation for that to be incredibly successful. Then talk about a third evoker spec and whether or not it's coming or not, and whether a third spec for classes, so like a support spec, combining DPS and healing. I'm guessing, is that something that will be implemented?
It's certainly not in Embers of Neltharion, right? Like that's
Okay.
not something that we would be able to hide very well. It's certainly not that well, right? And if we did ever do something like that, we'd want to test it. But yeah, I mean, we've never added a spec to a class. I guess you could argue Guardian way back in the day is probably the last time
Mm,
we did that. But that was also an expansion boundary. Doing that in a patch would have a bunch of challenges we would have to solve. So yeah, not something we would that is happening with Emerald Neltharion.
is there a vision to open up weapons for other classes?
Um, yeah, actually, funny enough, especially with the trading post, I'm not sure if you've been keeping up with that,
Yes.
but most recently, was it most recently? Not too long ago, the trading post reward had something that only, well, okay, it wasn't universally usable, right? It was a weapon set that some people were like, wait a minute, I can't use these weapons. What's with that? So certainly things like the trading post have forced conversations like that again, as we start to add more options when it comes to cosmetics and really,
Mm,
a goal of the World of Warcraft team is really to give players the opportunity to express themselves in any number of ways, be it from their character customizations to their transmogs to any other number of things. Drakthir, we have such an incredible amount of customizations. I think someone said there was more customization options for Drakthir than grains of sand on the planet. And I was like, I don't plan to verify that, so I'm just gonna believe you. um, so yeah, that is something that is very much a focus of the team. And you know, traditionally the weapon restrictions are very, like core kind of pen and paper
mm.
RPG driven, and that's the way it's been for a long time. But that doesn't mean that isn't something that we couldn't revisit. Like I said, especially with things like the trading post and more customization options coming into the game.
What real world inspiration there was when you, especially in the latest update, Embers of Neltharion, was there a particular place that you guys had in mind?
Say Hawaii. Real
Hawaii.
world. I believe so because of
Oh,
the culture of some of the folks around Dragon Isles. Lava, some of the biomes that you find, even the caves and things like that. I think definitely it was part of the research from the art team. But there's many other places, of course, a lot of islands out there. But I think Hawaii was one of the main ones, I would say. But scaling everything much bigger and make sure that it fits with dragons because it has to be huge, right? Like the island is their island. It's not for us, if you think that way. So everything was like
very true.
scaled much bigger. And also like to make sure that Dragon Rider will feel like awesome, going to this like huge spaces.
Hmm.
So
Certainly with a lot of our cultures, we are constantly inspired by
Mm.
other areas around the world. And I know like the Tuskar, for instance, has a
Oh,
lot of
I love them.
inspiration, and the team really has a lot of fun with, we do a lot of outreach when it comes to like our inclusivity efforts to make sure that we're talking to the right people and making sure we're representing cultures appropriately. And that's something that I always love to see the group focus on and get into the game, because it's always, they make for some of the most memorable characters for sure. Just thank you so much, and also thank you to the community. We've had so much fun with Dragonflight, and it's really have appreciated the kind words that we've heard from the community and the excitement around all the cool content, and especially the content cadence that the team has been keeping up with, and the community's reaction to that has been just really energizing for us and our team. So just thank you to you, and also thank you to the community.
Yeah, thank you. I think for sure check out the major public events that we're gonna have. We're gonna have some unique dragon stuff happening, above and inside the Zarlek Cavern. Gonna be really fun. And again, the UI team is always looking for improvements that we can make in the UI, looking ahead. So definitely keep giving your feedback, and then we are watching for sure. We want to make sure that the UI is very easy to use and user friendly and all that.
Thank you so much, Morgan and Laura, for talking with Game on Oz today. It's been an absolute pleasure having you. Can't wait to jump into Embers of an Eltharion, which is available on May 2nd, 2023.